Moonprincess here, and for this video I'm just gonna talk about what I've been doing the past few days and why I went on this trip. So my mother and I went on a mother-daughter trip as a birthday / graduation gift from my mother. We went to New Orleans. So there were a couple reasons we went with New Orleans. I was interested in seeing the Museum of Death, and there happened to be a Museum of Death in New Orleans. Originally we were looking at LA, but LA was a little intimidating for me, and it didn't have quite the spooky pizzazz as I was going for, or like the aesthetic. So I have an interest in like creepy things, you know, like true crime and like supernatural myths or like stories, you know. I'm not saying that I believe the stories or anything like that. I just find them very interesting and I like to kind of look into them. And I really wanted to see some really interesting places. The voodoo shop, there was a pharmacy museum in New Orleans, and it was the first like licensed pharmacy in the US, which is kind of interesting, and I saw a lot of cool things there, which I can get into some other time. But basically, Museum of Death, voodoo, we went on a haunted tour, and on this haunted ghost tour we went to various places of interest. Unfortunately, we did not really talk about Axeman, which I really wanted to talk about, and the lady just was like, well, there's not enough information. But like, I mean, there's enough that there's a lot of hubbub about it, and I have listened to things about this case, right? Like, what happened, and he was a real person. They never caught him or anything, but there's enough that warrants having a conversation, if you ask me. But, you know, that aside, we also got beignets, which was really fun. I was able to visit Madame Lalaure's house. We didn't go in it because it's private property and wasn't part of the tour. It was a walking tour, but I already knew the story of Madame Lalaurie, and it's very chilling. I got straight up chills being around that house. And the Ursuline convent was an interesting story as well, and you know, I'm not sure about how much of it I believe from what she said, and I'm hoping to do more research into some of these situations. There were also some murder-suicide cases that I learned about, not really from the ghost tour, but I started looking things up. She kind of hinted at some more recent cases, and one of the more recent things that was developing in New Orleans was a murder-suicide, and there were two that were like incredibly similar, which I may go into at another time. There's the Andrew Jackson Hotel, there's like I said, the Ursuline Convent, there's the Cornstalk Fence Hotel, which I don't know much about, and it's frankly confusing. But the Andrew Jackson Hotel is interesting, and I may talk about that at some point. Let's see. There's a bunch of things pressed him to buy the house. He also got in a bunch of trouble. There were domestic violence charges against him for domestic violence towards his wife. He's been arrested multiple times in New Orleans, and they were like, you need to go. And I found similar things corroborating this online. There's also a lot of vampire stuff in New Orleans that I may touch on. So there's that. But the Nicolas Cage stuff is bizarre. He also spent like, I think, $60,000 on a tomb that looks like a pyramid. And he like basically displaced existing tombs to place his own there that's empty because he's still alive. And people in New Orleans were pissed about this because it was like a very meaningful, cemetery. Also, he placed it specifically where it would be, I think, across from Marie Laveau's tomb, or, grave, which is just unnecessary and kind of like mean, and people did not take kindly to this. Also, the crime rate in New Orleans has risen since COVID, and it's not good. I'm also interested in doing a video talking about stuff in Savannah, Georgia. There's a couple cases. Also the history of both Savannah and New Orleans and like the dark parts of it. The rates of yellow fever, the voodoo, however you want to pronounce it, and hoodoo in Savannah. They have hoodoo. So they're both supposed to be very haunted locations. I actually stayed at a hotel in Savannah that used to be a funeral home. Now, I haven't at this point been able to find much on it yet, but I'm gonna dig deeper, I think, and see what I can find, as well as cases from Forsyth County or Forsyth Park, basically. I also found out that New Orleans was where Plessy v. Ferguson, became relevant, where he was arrested and everything like that. And there were some really cool murals over there next to the sign marking the significance of this event and where it took place. And it was right down the street from this art exhibit my mom and I went to, and it was amazing, both. So, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff there on both cases. There's been a lot of issues with racial stuff in both, and they were both like major hubs of slavery and slave trade and stuff like that, because they were like, I think, ports or something like that. So I'm interested in looking into this and discussing it. There were a couple cases in New Orleans, Zach Bowen and Addie Hall. There's 2 cases where it was a couple and there was like domestic violence, and the man basically was murder-suicide, and they dismembered the body. Of course, if you're not into stuff like that, don't watch that particular content, and I will, of course, put a disclaimer in the beginning. I'm trying to make a really good habit of that so people know and they don't get angry at me when they watch a video and they're like, what the fuck is this? You've been warned again, and you will be warned in every video if that is not content that you're interested in. But I listen to true crime stuff, and right now I've been listening to Stranger Danger's podcast, and I've listened to almost all of it. So, there's that, and basically, it's been really giving me the spooky vibes, spooky energy, and like piqued my interest in true crime again. So I'm hoping to use this as like momentum to, work on some cases. I'm currently working on a case. I have put together the script for it, but updates from the police and other avenues to see what additional information I can get on the cases, and like what happened to those involved, like after being convicted and getting confirmation about their parole and like stuff like that, and just like find out if there are any details that they left out, because the case I'm looking into right now, is from the 70s, so there's like nothing on it online. I'm looking at cases that are not as popular that I couldn't find a lot of stuff on, and I'm gonna try to do research. But we'll see. I may mix things up as well, but it's a big interest of mine. And I'm working on other videos as well, stuff that's more tame, because I like a variety of content myself, and I know that not everybody likes true crime, so for those who like it, awesome. I hope you'll watch my videos, and for those who don't, I will always have other content available to watch that is more chill and less true crimey. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts, any topics you're interested in me covering, and I will, keep uploading videos or sharing about what I'm working on, and I hope you enjoy. So have a good night.